What's up, guys and girls? This is Coxie1979 and this is going to be part 10 of our Unity 5 first person shooter tutorial series. In the last tutorial we actually did the crosshair and the sound for our minigun. Before we get started today, I just want to get you to do a couple of quick things. So first of all, once you go up here to the Tyrant Zombie in your hierarchy and click on that, and then on the enemy AI script that we did, double click on that to open it up in Mono Develop. I've just upgraded Unity to the newest version, so you get this option to convert your line endings now, which is really good because you want them to be converted for Windows. If you're using a Mac or something like that, God forbid, then make sure you're using the Mac line endings or whatever. So click OK on that, and then come down to the bottom here, and where we did this function apply damage down here, which I've already edited out, just highlight all of this and just delete it from the script, and then save that. Go back into Unity. And the only other thing I've changed is I messed around with the gravity and the capsule collider and the character controller because the enemy was kind of lifting off the ground when he was chasing me. So I've just changed my gravity to 50, and I've made sure that the capsule collider and that isn't too far below the ground, so his feet actually get to sit on the ground properly. What I also did was I changed the enemy's health in the enemy health script to 150 to give him a little bit more health, and under first person character for our raycast shooting script, I've put the damage down to 1 for now because I actually want the enemy to be able to take a fair few shots before he dies, because we only had him on a one-hit kill just to make sure that our script was working, and because we've got an automatic minigun, he's getting shot a lot of times in a very short period. So that's why I've changed this. So now when you have a look, and I'll get him to start chasing us, it actually takes that long to kill him, which is what I want, because we're actually going to do at some stage we're going to have a blood effect coming out of the enemy when we are shooting him. Anyway, so today what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that the enemy can actually damage and kill us, because as you'll see at the moment, see how down the bottom there we get this error message, send message, apply damage has no receiver. That's because, as I said when we did our scripts, I made it I defined what applied damage was, but it hasn't got a receiver because we actually don't have a health script on our player. So it's got nothing to damage at the moment. So what we're going to do is do a player health script so it knows to damage us and take away our health until we are dead. So we defined, where is it? We define the damage as 40. So the enemy can hit us, if we're gonna have 100 health, so he should be able to hit us 3 times and we're out of there. Okay, so let's get started. So go to, make sure it's first person controller, not first person character. Click on first person controller, that's very important, and then go to add component and type in SCR or whatever till you bring up new script. Click on that and make sure it's a JavaScript, which mine is, and we will just call it player health, create and add, and you'll see it's put it down there, and it's also already applied it to our first person controller. So you can either double click on it there or double click on it there, it doesn't matter. I'll double click on it here and open it up in Mono Develop, convert the line endings, OK, and we're going to do a couple of variables to start off with. First I'll just make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see what's going on, and we'll just do a couple of variables to start with, and we'll do var max health is going to be equal to 100, as I said, so that's our total health. And then we're going to do var health, which is going to be an integer. So it's an integer is a number. Now we are going to go to function start, and we're just going to say health. Actually, I don't want it like that. I want it to have a bit of a gap there so I can see what's going on a bit better. Health equals max health, semicolon. Get rid of function update. We're not going to be using it for this script. And we're going to do a function apply damage, and we'll call what we've already called it in the previous script, the damage, with a lowercase t. Don't forget that has to be the same, and it's going to be int. So underneath that, open and close curly brackets, bit of room, and we're going to type health minus equals the damage. And underneath this, we're going to do an if statement, and we're going to say if health is less than or equal to 0, open and close curlies, then we want to call a function which is going to be called dead. We haven't actually written this function yet, but I know I'm going to write it, so I'm going to call it anyway. So make sure dead, open close parentheses, and then a semicolon. So if our health gets down to 0 or below, we're going to call this function which is dead, and then we are going to let it know what function dead actually is. So underneath that, function dead. So what we're going to be doing in function dead is we're going to be, because we're actually going to write a respawn script as well, so that when we die we can actually have it come up on the screen and say you died. It's going to be very simple. We're just going to code it, the GUI, but you can actually use, you can make all kinds of buttons and menus and stuff in Unity 5 now, but we're just going to write it in code in our respawn script. But yeah, essentially it'll say you died when we die, and then there'll be a button that says respawn, and you'll click on that. So in function dead, we're going to need to call the respawn script. So we'll just call the respawn script player respawn, just so we don't forget what it was called. You shouldn't really write code like this. You should come back and fill it in later, but because I've already written this code before, it's fine. So yeah, player respawn dot player is dead equals true, semicolon. And that is fine for our function dead for now. So now underneath this we're going to do another function, and we'll call it function, we'll call it respawn health. Respawn health, and under that we're going to go health equals, make sure you type max health with a lowercase like we've been doing up there. I'm trying to get in the habit of always starting any variable that's more than one word with a lowercase. So max health semicolon, and that should do, I'll make sure that max health, respawn health, and we've got to remember that we're going to call that next script player respawn, so remind me of that please, thank you. Okay, now did I save it? Nope, make sure you save it, otherwise it's going to be useless to us. Go back into Unity. It says unknown identifier player respawn. That's because we haven't actually made a script called player respawn. So what we're going to do is we need to make a place where we want to respawn, and I would like to respawn down here. I'm just going to use my arrow keys. If you're low to the ground, your arrow keys will speed up as you hold it down and get faster and faster. So it's a pretty quick way to move about, unless you've got an object down here to move yourself to. So we are just going to make sure you're not selected on anything in the hierarchy. Right click, create empty. You can change the name up there, or you can click on this and change the name, or you can just press F2 and we'll call it player spawn point. Player spawn point, that's fine. And you can see it's an empty game object. Just make sure it's not too close to the ground, because you don't want to respawn under the ground. So I'm just going to move mine up a little bit higher, a bit exaggerated, just to make sure. So we've got our respawn point. So now we need to write our respawn script. Excuse me. So what we're going to do, go back to FPS controller. Make sure you're not selecting character. You want controller for this, okay? So go add component, new script, and we'll just call it player respawn, because that's what we need to call it. Because if we don't call it player respawn, it's not going to work, because that's what we have said in our other script. So player respawn, create an add, open it up. I'll open up with this one this time. So as you can see, I'm reminding you again, in the player health we called it player respawn. That's what we're calling when we're calling our function dead, when our health is below 0. So this script must be called the same as that. I'm just reinforcing that, otherwise it's not going to work. Okay, so now we are going to give ourselves a bit of room here, and we are going to do two variables, var player look, and it's going to be, I couldn't figure out any other way to do this, because what these variables are for is we want a player look variable and we want a character controller variable, because we want to be able to disable from looking around when we're dead, and we also want to be able to disable moving when we're dead. It's not actually going to disable our gun, but I'll try to fix that in a later tutorial. But this will, once we die and the two boxes come up, one says you died, one is a button to click respawn, you don't want to be able to look around and you don't want to be able to move your character. So we're going to declare these variables so that we can actually disable them. And in my limited knowledge, this is the only way that I could figure out how to do it, because I'm not very smart. So you'll just have to deal with writing this massive long line. Because what we're actually doing is we're accessing the script that's on our first person controller. So that's why we need to write it out like this, because in the newer versions of Unity we have to write all this to access that script. First person dot first person controller. Now you could make these variables private, but I'm not going to make them private because I want it to show up when we play the game in our script, so that I can show you that it's actually accessing the script by writing this here. Okay, you'll understand when I show you later on. So for now, I'll just make sure I've written that right. Unity standard assets, characters, first person controller. That's fine. And then underneath that, this one's a lot easier because we're going to it's going to be the character controller that we're going to grab. So just call it char controller because that makes sense, and it is type character controller. If it comes up and changes color like that, you know that you've typed it correctly. Character controller. Okay, and now we're going to do another variable, and it's going to be var respawn transform, and it is transform with a capital T. Okay, and now we're going to do a static var, and it's going to be player is dead equals false. So we want this to be a static var, player is dead false, because we don't want to be dead. Obviously, we want to be alive until we tell it that we are dead, until our health reaches 0 or below. Excuse me. Okay, so now under function start, we are going to do we're going to define what these variables actually mean in function start. So we're going to do player look equals game object dot get component, and make sure you've got an open parentheses, and then just grab this to make it easier for ourselves. Don't grab the semicolon yet. Copy that and just paste. As I said, there's probably an easy way to do this, but this is how I'm doing it, so all the smart people just have to deal with it. So that's done, and now we need to do the character controller. Char controller equals game object dot get component. Make sure I'm spelling this right, and it is going to be the character controller. Close that off, and then oops, semicolon. Okay, so yes, we now know what they are, and now in function update we're going to do an if statement. So if player is dead is equal to true, open and close curly brackets, we want to disable these now. Now that Unity knows what these variables are, character controller and player look, when we die we want to disable these so that we can no longer look around with that one there, and we can no longer move with that one there. So oops, don't type in capitals. Player look dot enabled equals false, and char controller dot enabled equals false, semicolon. Okay, so now we need to do our function on GUI, the same as we did for our door script, so that we can actually make some GUI appear on the screen. So yeah, let's do that now. So function on GUI, open and close parentheses, open and close curly brackets. So same as here, same if statement basically, well not basically, it is exactly the same if statement. If player is dead is equal to true. Then we want to do the one first. We'll just say like you died or something like that, and that's just going to be in a little box. And then underneath that, we'll do the one for respawning, which will actually be a button that we can push. So for this one, we'll just do it the same as we did for the door script. Excuse me, GUI dot box rect for rectangle screen dot width times 0.5 minus 50 comma 200 minus 20 comma 100 comma 40. Close that off, and then another comma and some quotation marks, because this is what we want to say. I highly recommend that you play around with one of these numbers at a time. It's basically saying the position we want it to be on the screen, and then it's which is these ones here, and then it's showing the length of the actual box and also the height of the actual box. So if you fiddle around with these numbers and then play the game, you'll be able to see exactly what each number does, and it's very handy to do. So I recommend you do that. Inside this, we're just going to have caps lock on and say you died, like that. We really mean it. And close that off, and then semicolon. Excuse me. Okay. So underneath that one, another if statement. If GUI dot button, this time because we want a button, not a box. I'm just going to copy this, copy all that, copy, paste. We just need to change it because we don't want it to be in the same position as this one, obviously. So all we're going to change is this here to 240. Make sure you change this. I'm just going to say respawn. And very importantly, take the semicolon off the end and add another close parentheses. Okay, that's very important that you do that. Do not leave it the same as that or it won't work. Okay, so underneath this, open and close curly brackets. And we are going to call a function which we haven't made yet, as usual. We'll call it respawn player. Oops, what am I doing? respawn player. Make sure you do it like that. I'm just trying to make mistakes as usual. You guys know I love making mistakes. Okay, so now we're going to do the function for respawn player, which is what we've called here. So function respawn player. What am I doing? Try that again. Open and close curly brackets. Okay, that's better. So this is going to be once we click on the GUI button that says respawn. So obviously we want to transform our position and rotation and move ourselves to where we are going, where we have placed our spawn point. So transform dot position equals respawn transform dot position semicolon transform dot rotation equals respawn transform dot rotation game object dot send message open and close parentheses quotation marks, and this is what we have called in, where is it? Yeah, in our player health. So player respawn. No. Respawn health, sorry. What am I talking about? Yeah. Respawn health. I'll just double check that and make sure it's, yep. Respawn health. And then make sure that we put a semicolon at the end of that. And now we want to re-enable the movement, or the look, sorry, the mouse look, which is basically what it is it's a mouse look and character controller, because we're respawned, we're not dead anymore, we're dead, so we disabled it, and now we want to enable it. So I'm just going to grab them to there, copy them, paste them, and I'm going to change false to true, and we also want to make sure player is dead equals false, just to make sure that it knows that we don't want to be dead anymore. Okay, I think that should be fine. Save that. We'll soon find out. I know you guys are laughing. You know I'm going to make mistakes, don't you? But anyway, let's have a look. Oh, I think we're good. Still just saying has no receiver, but that was from before. So if I clear that, yeah. Okay, so now what we need to do before we test this out is click on the first person controller, and this is what I was talking about them variables that I said I could have made private. You'll notice that there's nothing in there now, but when we start the game it will find this. It'll find the script that's on our first person character, and it'll also find our character controller automatically. However, what we do need to do is we need to put our respawn point in there. Oh, what am I doing? Sorry, I just had a bit of a brain lapse like usual. So respawn, transform, which is our player spawn point that we made. So that goes in there. I'll leave this on so we can see the player's health. As you can see, it says max health 100, health 0 at the moment. When we start the game, that should say 100. So let's test it out. Enough talking, let's do it. Okay, so here we go. Our health's up to 100. As you can see, it's found the script, the FPS controller script, and it's also found the character controller, which is brilliant. That's what we want. And now, if the enemy comes up to us, you'll see our health go down and then dead. It says you died, and we have a respawn button. If we click on that, bang, we start back here. Okay, so it works. It's not the best. I know it's you know, it's a bit dodge, but hey, it's a start. So the only problem with this script is once we die, as I was saying at the start, we can still shoot our gun. As you can see, which is a slight problem, but we can always fix that later on. And I can't move, and like I can't look around, and I can't move, and it all works fine. So yeah, that's good enough for now. I hope you enjoy the tutorial, guys, and girls as well, if girls are watching. And yeah, I thank you for your support, and I really do appreciate it if you guys can like the videos and maybe leave some comments and things like that, just to help me out a bit. That'd be fantastic. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you in number 11. Cheers.